Yo, 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 what is up, guys? We are back with another one. Your boy, Rug Pull Guru, bringing you everything you need to know about NATs, bitnats. I'm probably going to end up breaking this video down into a few different parts and re-uploading those individual parts. If you guys like to watch a smaller video, because this video might get a little lengthy, I'm going to try to get through it pretty quick and try to cover everything from the basic to how to list and verify your valid bitnat nats, but we're going to try to go through it thoroughly. So if you guys want an understanding of this, you hopefully can get one. And if you don't want an understanding, or you maybe don't quite understand it, that's completely fine. You don't need to understand everything that I'm going to cover in this video to mint bitnats, to mint nats from the bitnats, listing them and verifying that they're valid. But it probably will help you in the future as more bitnat nats get released. So in this video, we're going to cover what are nats, what are bitnat nats, bitnat versus bitmap, bitnat use case, and how to extract bitnat nats from .bitnats. And then we're going to talk a little bit about track, kind of their indexing. So a big question people are asking are, what is a nat, right? So a nat is a non-arbitrary token, okay? What does non-arbitrary mean? Non-arbitrary means it is not subject to an individual determination. So information like a tick or typical max supply and mint amounts per mint are all arbitrary, right? These numbers are decided by an individual, where data like bits is determined by many inputs and cannot be decided by an individual. So normally when we were to make a token, you would put in a max supply as an individual, and you would also put in the max mint amount, right? These are all numbers decided by one person. This hash, for example, it's non-arbitrary because an individual didn't decide this. The Bitcoin network did. This bits right here, this number was decided by the Bitcoin network. This wasn't decided by an individual. And that's what makes it non-arbitrary, is that an individual didn't decide that. That's all that means. It's very simple. An individual didn't decide the data that we're using. So non-arbitrary token, right? A NAT is a non-arbitrary token. It uses elements that look to a piece of non-arbitrary data, Bitfield, for example, to derive the NAT's existence. So what that's saying is an element, you can go to mscribe here, elements, and it'll show all the elements, right? And it'll give you a name, right? So let's look at infinity, for example. It'll give you a pattern 888, and it'll tell you the field. So field 11 is the bit field. That's all this is saying. This is giving a name to a pattern and where the pattern is found. Now what you can do with this element is you can create a non-arbitrary token. This is the non-arbitrary pattern. This is the non-arbitrary field. And this is the name of this pattern. So if we were to go over to nats, non-arbitrary tokens, DMT infinity, DMT infinity is calling out infinity, that 888 element that we looked at. Where is it at? It's in the bit field, field 11, and that is the element. And if we were to look at this deployment ID, it's going to give us valuable information. It's going to tell us specifically this ticker, infinity, is looking at this element, which we know that element is the 888 pattern inside the bit field. That's what this element's looking at, the 888 pattern in the bit field, and whether or not we're going to be using the numerical or the hex. So if you guys remember looking at bitnat, we were looking at hex. For infinity, this token, using this element 888, we're looking at the numerical. So if we were to use mscribe, it already gives us the bits and that numerical value. If we were to be using hex, so it would give us an H there instead of an N, we'd be looking for that pattern 888 in the hex version of field 11. That's what this is telling us. And that's essentially how a NAT is derived, right? That's how it is derived into existence. It's using an element to look at that non-arbitrary data, specifically 888 pattern in field 11 in the numerical version. And if 888 is to exist in the numerical version, then this would be a valid mint if we want to mint this. So let's say we found a block and we wanted to mint infinity. We found 888 existing in the numerical for a block. How would that look? We're going to call out the protocol tap to mint this ID, right? This ID is found right here. We're going to call out to mint that ID with this tick, infinity, at a specific block height. I found a block that had infinity. And let's say we're going to call on this script, but first we need to verify that nobody had minted this infinity. We could look it up on Genie data. I like to look it up in quotes because it's going to give you a more simplified version. And if we look, there's been 1, 2, 3 mints of infinity. First is first, January 7th. We can look at this and ensure it's correct. Now, if they put the wrong ID here, if they misspelt the ticker, if they didn't put this phrase in there like this, and then if they had done it correctly, then they're going to receive those NAT tokens. And then you can go on and find another block that has 888 in it, and that's how you hunt for NATs. So that was a NAT. Now we're going to talk about UNATs. And the first UNAT created was DMT and NatCats. And what does UNAT stand for? UNAT is a unique non-arbitrary token. And what makes it unique? It comes from adding attributes or traits based on traits derived from block number or block attributes. So we'll talk exactly what that means. But NatCats, if you were to look at this NAT, it calls on 3B, pattern 3B, field 11. That's the element. We look on the deployment ID. And here it tells you it's looking at the hex field. So we need to find 3B in the hex field. If that's true, if 3B is true in the hex field, then a NatCat exists. So this project's already completely minted out. No need to look for these anymore. What makes it unique is that the NatCat developer created attributes based on block numbers. So based on this first number, the second number, third, fourth, fifth, and combinations, you could look on project info and in traits documentation, and they break down exactly where these traits come from. They come from the block number, and these different combinations of patterns are what gives these different traits to the NatCat. So a UNAT is a image or item created by applying attributes or traits to individual numbers from the block, or you could even aim from the hash or generation from the bit number. It's essentially, an NFT, and NFTs are yesterday. Shout out to Block Runner Podcast. The UNAT is this image, right? This unique. And the UNAT is generated from the mint inscription. So when you go in mint, let's say infinity was a UNAT, which it's not, but let's say it is. Let's say each one of these numbers calls out a different attribute for the UNAT. This mint inscription that ends up in your wallet will show you the specific block number, right? It'll show you all of these different individual numbers that can be used to generate that image. When you place this into a transfer inscription, you will be then separating the NATs from the UNAT, and you can sell those transfer tokens. But the UNAT, this mint inscription, will still stay in your wallet. You still own the UNAT. You just separated the NATs from the UNAT. They're two different things. When you go to mint a project that is generating a UNAT, you are going to be given both the UNAT via this inscription, mint inscription, because it has the necessary information to generate the picture, whereas the transfer inscription is just going to create fungible tokens. There's no way to tell one transfer inscription from another currently. I think in the future, there's going to be some type of traceability. Don't quote me on it. But we'll see what the future brings with that. So bitnat versus bitmap, and why they are not competition but coexist and add value to each other. There's been some discussions about, isn't bitnat just taking value away from bitmap, the same project, copy pasta? Isn't that what this is? No, that's not what this is. A bitmap is land. It's an NFT that's giving you access to a plot of land or a parcel of land, where then inside of that land or inside of that parcel, you could have a room, you could have a house, you could have a game, you can have all sorts of different virtual spaces that you could go and exist in. That's bitmap. It is a metaverse land project. So all of the bitmap hashes, all of these unique attributes that are going to be found, and all of these bit numbers and the hexadecimals and the patterns that are going to be found, those are going to be used to alter the bitmap realm, the space around you, the land around you, whereas bitnat is a commodity project. And what that looks like is, let's say you're a group of people who want to drop an item like a coffee mug to a bunch of holders, and this coffee mug is going to be able to be represented inside of the metaverse. The bitmap is going to give you access into the area. The bitnat is going to be used to generate items and commodities within that space. Let's say there was coffee cups. What they could do is they could just launch a mint where a bunch of bots could show up, or they're going to have to do a whole whitelisting project. They might have to individually make a program that generates this art, or they might have to individually make all of these cups. There's a lot of work that has to go into performing this action. How are you going to do a fair drop? What you could do is you could say, I want to do a rare drop. Everybody that holds a bitnat hash with 21 zeros will get a coffee drop. They will get this nat. They will be able to extract that unat and that nat from their bitnat if they hold a bitnat with 21 zeros. And these numbers afterwards and letters afterwards could all be different attributes that change what the cup looks like, what the cup does, what it's filled with, and maybe unique features that brings to each one. And based on the rarity of patterns inside of that, or what these numbers are, you're going to generate everywhere from a common to an uncommon based on how the developer wanted to code the attributes. And so as a creator, instead of making 20,000 or 30,000 or 8,000 different pieces of artwork, you could just assign attributes to specific data points that will auto-generate these pieces of artwork or these items or the attributes that the item has within it automatically. So you can very quickly program a 50,000 item with a bunch of variety. And as a game developer or as an item maker, this is going to save so much time. It's going to give so much variability to what you're building, an extremely immersive world. Instead of just picking 6 different costumes or 3 different loadouts, you could go from, I want 10 different loadouts to I want hundreds of thousands or millions of different pieces. And what the bitnat project is doing is it's aiming to decode all of these values and all of these patterns, all of the digital material that is given to us by Bitcoin to allow for streamlined generation of items with all different types of rarities. Once we understand patterns, how frequently they come up, a developer will be able to decide, well, I want an item in a game that has this much rarity. Okay, well, we have a pattern that's that much rarity. So use that element that calls out that pattern in that field, drop that item to bitnat holders who hold that pattern in that field. And before they decide to use that pattern and drop it to the bitnat holders, data analysis will be used to determine how many unique addresses are we dropping this to. Does this pattern only exist 2,000 times and there's only 100 wallets? Okay, well, we're not going to use that pattern. We're going to use a different pattern that gives us the uniqueness that we want, that creates the item that we want, that drops to the right amount of people. Or let's say I'm a project who wants to drop items to my community. Maybe certain projects commonly drop to specific patterns. Then maybe those bitnats will be looked at as more valuable because they know that these patterns are going to get dropped. So right now, some bitnats are going to be valuable, but that could change. You could have some patterns become more sought after due to the developers choosing one pattern over another. And what I probably see happening is there's going to be rare bitnats that are sought after and held, and then there's going to be common bitnats which kind of just get recycled. So you could have hundreds of thousands of these bitnats that float around. They don't have too much value on them, but once a developer creates a nat that's going to be used for a game or an item somewhere, all of those bitnats will be sought after, attempted to be bought, so that they could then mine their own item, or the owners of those bitnats will then mine those items, keep those items, sell those items. But the developer, before they release their product, they'll be able to know how many wallets are getting it. Is this going to get botted out? No, it's not. These have to be bitnat holders who are going to get this. There's real people involved. It's going to be a free and fair drop because these bitnats were distributed prior to the item release and the game release. So it's going to lead to an extremely fair process in which developers get to decide who gets them. Does the developer need to go snag some of these naps on their own so that when they drop this product, they have some for their treasury? How's that going to work? And then once all those nats get farmed from that pattern, what's going to happen? Another pattern is going to get used. Other bitnats are going to be sought after. Those original bitnats, maybe that was that first pattern for that first project, are going to get dumped on the market because they don't have any value. They're going to get traded around. Demographics will change. Then a developer will be able to decide, we're going to use this new pattern or this old pattern. And once the nat gets mined from the bitnats, that bitnat essentially becomes worthless until another nat is generated from it that you can mine from. So there's going to be a lot of common bitnats that just get snatched up from people, mine the nat, then throw the bitnat back onto the market. And that's exactly what people are going to want to see. We're going to want to see a bunch of bitnats on the market, everybody distributed evenly. Certain communities collect certain types, but there's going to be tons of commons that are just picked up, mined from, and then dumped back onto the market, which is exactly how the bitnat should work. They should be fluid so that developers can decide who to drop to. Do they have a diehard community where there's 100 or 1,000 bitnats that are held by 1,000 members strong, and they commonly drop to that pattern? They get to decide if that's how they want to do it. Or maybe they don't want to drop to a specific bitnat holding community. They will drop to the common maps, right? So then the common maps will just be known. The common maps will just be known as the common maps that randomly nats get dropped on. And that is the use case for bitnat. It's going to be a commodity based. It's going to be where items get dropped, and it's going to be a way that developers can ensure the items are going where they want to go, the amount of items are going where they want to go, the rarity is achieved, and all of this is just infrastructure that bitnat is building. Bitnat and bitmap are two different projects. Bitnat is looking to decode all of the data in order to generate items and commodities, and bitmap is a metaverse land project. So now we're going to talk about how to extract the bitnat nats. These here are all of the minting contracts. I'm going to post that in the description below. These nats are currently not being indexed properly. As of right now, you could mint any of these contracts from a bitnat that you are not holding. That track the indexer will see that you have a valid inscription of, let's say, this nat. Even if you didn't own the bitnat, it will give you this bitnat. Then you could go on and sell that bitnat. Once the indexer is up to verify properly, the nat that you just bought will no longer be valid. So you want to ensure trading right now is, you need to be very certain that what you're buying is going to be valid in the future, because just because it's valid right now doesn't mean it's going to be valid in the future. And that's a super important message to get across, because we don't want anybody buying invalids, or we don't want anybody just minting a bunch of these 11s, putting them on the market, people thinking they got 11s, but the person who minted all of these 11s didn't ever own the bitnat. Once the indexer is updated, which should be very soon, all of those 11s you just bought are now invalid. Okay, so we're going to talk about how to verify that you are buying a valid one. Or if you just want to wait till they're indexed properly, you can do that. I highly recommend you know exactly what you're getting yourself into when you go to buy these off the market. And we're going to talk about how to do it, but make sure you do your research. So how do we generate these contracts? We go over to mscribe nats. We'll go find the nats that are associated with the project. Currently, this is the tickers that we're looking for. I already have them all here. You can go to nats on the mscribe page, find these. We showed earlier in the video how to do that with infinity, but we're going to just show how to do that here. Let's say you wanted to min 11 because you own a bitnat that has 11 in the hex bit field. You go to deployment ID. So what you can see here is the element pointing at is 11. It's aiming at the project. What is the project? It should be the bitnats project. This is how you're going to tell that this is associated with the bitnat project. You'll see a project here. You can look up that ID. What is it? It shows us the bitnats project. And that's how you know that this is a bitnat nat, is because it has a project associated with it and it aims at that bitnat project. You can see here it's the hex field. That's the pattern 11. That's what we all looked for. This is the ticker and this is the ID. So if we wanted to mint an 11, we would take our inscription here. We would make sure that we have this ID here is the correct ID. This ticker here matches this ticker, and we would put in a block height of a map that we have. So let's say I want to extract this nat10 from a bitnat that I own. I'll look up this bitnat that I own, 643101, 643101. We'll look into the bit field. We'll see that the pattern 10 does exist. So this nat is valid for this block that I own. What am I going to do? I'm going to run this script here, and I'm going to put in the block height. Run this inscription any place you would like. I'm going to go to Unisat. And like we discussed, track is not indexing these properly, but you can just make sure that you did it correctly. You can look up your address. And I can see here that I have 2 now. I already ran the script before, and that's why I have 2. But like I discussed, this indexer is not indexing properly. So it may come up as 0 if somebody else minted from your bitnat, right? So that's not going to be a valid nat once the indexer is up indexing these properly. The current check to verify that the wallet owner is holding that bitnat in their wallet before awarding them this nat is not currently functioning. This is a top priority for track, and it should be up and running soon. So this is not accurate currently. You can just check this to make sure maybe you're doing it properly, but this is not giving you validation that in the future, once the indexer is running, is that true, okay? All right, guys, now that you have your inscription, this is the inscription I created, and I want to list it. I'm going to open it up. Let's say we're going to go for 0.01 BTC. List now. And it's that easy. This mint inscription for bitnats 643101 with this ticker is listed for 0.01 BTC. As a seller, what you need to include so that the buyer can verify that this is a valid inscription is this address here so that they can come buy it from you. And the bitnats inscription of the block. So this block, you need to include this one as well so that they can come check, verify that you were the owner, that you didn't transfer it out anywhere. And as a buyer, you also need to go look up this bitnats, ensure this is the valid owner. You can look here and see that, yes, this is the valid owner. You can check out these inscriptions. You can see here that there's 2 inscriptions. Which one's valid? The first one. So this one is the first one. You would look at this inscription number, verify that this is the inscription number that's for sale. You go over here, look at that. That is the inscription number for sale. So then you know that this is a valid inscription. Currently, the track indexer isn't indexing properly. We know that they're working hard over there. So we're just going to give them time. It should be soon. If you don't want to take all these steps, or if you're unsure what you're doing, then you can just wait because you might buy something that appears as valid, but it's not. If you don't take these steps, you don't verify that all of this is written exactly how it needs to be and that the owner owned the bitnat and inscribed it properly at the time, and you're not comfortable doing that, then just wait till it's indexed properly. But if you do want to play into the market, this is how you're going to do it. This is how you verify. I hope you guys learned something. This is a long video. Tomorrow, I'll be chopping the video up into a few parts and releasing it so you guys can digest it into sections if that's what you'd like to do. All right, guys, take care.